Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Hi, Timmy.
Hi. Is everything okay?
Hello, everyone. We're going to start very soon. We're going to wait 30 more seconds and then we start, please.
Stephanie. Good evening, good night, good morning, wherever you guys are. We're here at Ongava. On my left is Stephanie Berkey, on my right William Fasfeld. I'm John Mendelsohn, and we're going to be telling you a bit about Ongava Research Center, the things that interest us, the things that we do, and we'll do so for about 15 minutes, and then you'll have a chance to ask us some questions. So Steph and William will talk to you a bit later. I'm going to start off with some introduction. So if you guys want to go off behind the camera, so to speak. So if you were to open up your phones or your laptops and open up Google Earth and have a look at an image of the whole of Africa, towards the bottom of Africa, about a quarter way up from the top, you'll see a little white dot. In fact, it's not that little. That's Etosha Pan. And that's an old ancient lake that's now dry. It's been scoured by wind into a salt pan. But just exactly 25 kilometers southwest of the southwestern corner of that pan is where we are. We are the Ongava Research Center. We're situated on Ongava Game Reserve, and we're really lucky to be in this magnificent part of the world. The research center is about 4 years old. There are the three of us here as professional staff, and we've gotten a number of research projects going, and we have a whole lot of other projects that we're keen to get going, and that's really what we're going to talk to you about. So I'm going to call on Steph now to have a chat to you about some of her interests, and I'll see you guys later on.
Alright guys, so I'm Steph and I'm a behavioral ecologist, mainly working on carnivores. But today I'm actually going to talk to you about a key resource that is in the environment, arid environment that we're living in here in Namibia. It's waterhole. So you've got one waterhole behind me here, and water being a key resource, obviously it attracts a lot of life. And by a lot of life, I mean a lot of prey, a lot of ungulates, a lot of carnivores, a lot of birds. And because of that, these waterholes and the area around them become hotspot for life. And because prey congregate around those waterholes, especially at the end of the dry season, they become basically very, very attractive for carnivores, because carnivores know that they will find prey there. So they become actually a very risky place for prey to spend time around. And usually when ungulates approach those waterholes, they have to be very careful not to be preyed upon. So it means that there is, in the landscape, there is also not just the landscape as we see it usually, the hills, the wooded area, the open area. There is also a landscape of fear. And that is actually a concept in ecology that is very popular at the moment. And it basically refers to how prey perceive the predation risk. The predation risk varies in the physical landscape. Predation risk, for instance, being often very high around those waterholes, but usually can be in those areas very low on top of the hills because predators are less likely to go up there. So around those waterholes, when prey use those areas, they need to spend more time being vigilant and paying a lot of attention to their surrounding, which means that they are not doing anything else such as drinking, feeding, or resting. And we figured out actually that the effect of that landscape of fear, how prey perceive the risk of being killed, has huge effect on the population dynamics and on their fitness, basically. And even more than being preyed upon, actually. The direct predation, so predator killing prey, has less of an effect than prey being scared, because when they are scared, they're either not doing anything else than watching around, but being scared also raises their stress hormones in the system, which means that the immune system is less efficient. And especially around the waterhole, there's a lot of concentration of pathogen and disease because they're used often. So then prey that are scared are more likely to pick up this pathogen, they're more likely to die from the disease. And they're also less fertile. Basically, their fecundity and fertility goes down as well. So the reproductive success also goes down. So that is something very important to take into account, is how actually predation can affect prey, not only in a direct way, not only killing them directly, but also just making them scared of using different places at different times. And that's about it for a short introduction for the landscape of fear.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is William, and I'm a population geneticist at the Ongava Research Center. As my colleague has just mentioned, she discussed a bit about the importance that we have of waters of the animals gathering as well as the landscape of fear. So we know that animals are quite reliant on water throughout the year. However, we also notice that they also have to migrate between different seasons to reach different areas. So what we have experienced is quite a bit with the migration patterns of the animals, and this has had a large impact from fence construction as well as land use. So with the land use and the fence construction, we also have to consider the perspectives of not just the animal ecology of movement, but also the gene flow that they're able to reach other populations that have been stuck on other sides to basically mix to increase their genetic potential. So what we have seen in northern Namibia, and as a good example of a study that we're currently doing, is looking at large terrestrial mammals in northern Namibia, is the lion population. So we know from the lion population globally it is reduced by quite a large amount, and this has also been the case within Namibia. So a study that we're currently busy with, we are considering lion individuals all the way from the west coast of Namibia into northeastern Namibia, which is the Caprivi Strip or the Kaza, if you have perhaps heard of this. And what we have seen within this population is that within northwestern Namibia, between the Skeleton Coast and Etosha, we have quite a good opportunity for lions to move between these areas, and we see a good gene flow happening. However, between Etosha and the northeastern Namibia, we again have the opposite. So we have large farming infrastructure as well as a lot of fences that are built in between to prevent these individuals moving back and forth. But not only do we have to consider this movement in the gene flow, we also have to rely on genetics to inform us about diversity. So within the diversity that we have seen with these lions, we see a good value of diversity in the northeastern Namibia versus the northwestern Namibia. And we gradually see this decrease from east to west. So what we have to consider for this, for management implications, is not just the ecology of movement, but also the genetics for gene flow perspectives, as well as their diversity. And we can hopefully use this for management plans that are being planned. to introduce high diverse population individuals into low diverse population individuals to assure the survival of these species in these areas.
Steph was talking about landscapes of fear, and one of the useful things, or a useful approach to take if you're a biologist, is to try to think what you would do if you're a plant or an animal. And as Steph was saying, if you're an animal and you're a water hole, it's obvious that you would be cautious, be prudent, and experience some fear. I'm going to chat a bit about what animals and plants do in the kind of arid environment that we are here. Ongava, where we are, gets about 350 millimeters of rain a year. That's about 12 inches. For those of you who are accustomed to those measurements, Namibia is the driest country south of the Sahara. Not only is it dry and rainfall is short, but what is important to realize or understand is that rainfall varies a lot from place to place, from year to year. So if you're a plant or an animal in this kind of arid environment, for much of the time it's very dry, it's very hot, there's nothing much you can live on, you need to think about survival strategies and strategies to breed. It turns out there, for many plants and animals, two major strategies. For those who can move, locusts, various insects that can move, and of course birds and bats, mobility is a key strategy for living in this kind of world. So that when it rains in an area halfway across the continent, you need to be able to fly there, you need to find out where that place is, assess different options, and also work out in your mind when best to leave so that you get there at the right time, after it's rained and after the vegetation has started to grow and insects and food and so on is available. So movement is a hugely important strategy for many animals. Of course, as William was saying earlier, movements of mammals and lots of other animals are now curtailed by fences that we put all over the place, and that indeed is a great problem. But mobility and nomadism or opportunism are all really important features or strategies if you want to live in this kind of environment. The second strategy for living here, and especially for reproducing, is to be able to respond episodically or eruptively, if you like. So for much of the time, much of the time, most animals and plants are not around. They're not visible, and if you look behind me here, there are half a dozen trees there. They don't have any leaves. They're actually alive, but they're hanging in there on the skin of their teeth. They're not growing, they're not seeding or flowering, they're just surviving. For the rest, there's really no grass. The grass that you see here is dead. There are no flowering plants. It's very, very inactive. You will see later on how this can change, and that is really the important thing about episodic structures. So that for most of the time, you're dormant, your seeds are underground, your spores are underground. For those that can sleep for long periods, like frogs and reptiles, they just go to sleep under the ground and can lie there sleeping for months, years, until it next rains. But when it does rain, everything changes, and that is really when life blossoms and most reproduction happens. The photograph that you'll see in a while of this same waterhole will give you a contrast, give you an idea of the contrast. Here we've got half a dozen trees, they're alive, they're dormant. The photograph you'll see has literally tens of thousands of plants growing in exactly the same area, all vibrant, all seeding, all very much alive. And they'll do that, and they'll live there for a few months or a few weeks until their seeds drop and the seeds go into the ground, and then they'll die off. The role of those plants, like so many animals, their role is really just to reproduce and to deposit their seeds and their spores and their eggs in a condition where they can last for very long periods until it next rains. So for much of the time, if you come to Namibia, you will see relatively little. Of course, they're exciting animals to see that do hang on. But in terms of the vibrance of life and the diversity of life, it's It's after these enormously productive periods that happen sporadically. No one knows when they're going to happen. For years we can be dry, and then suddenly after 10 years of drought, the world erupts, and Namibia is the most beautiful place in the world. So come and visit it. One of the consequences, I just need to end off on this, one of the consequences of having such an arid environment is that we have rather few people. And we were told in preparing this program that this broadcast or this video might go out to about 3 million people across the world. That's an astonishing number when you realize that, well, let me tell you that in Namibia, our total population is about 2.7 million people. So you guys that we're talking to, I hope you enjoy this information, and we'll be back later on to answer any questions. And we're grateful for the opportunity to talk to so many people across the world.
Okay, everyone. So please now feel free to ask your questions in the Q&A section. And then we will let Josephine and John answer your questions. So please ask away. Okay, Josephine and John, I believe we have a first question.
Can we answer by talking? You
Yes,
hear
of
us?
course.
Okay, yeah. It's pumped from underground, from a borehole. It's simple as that. The water in this area is about 15 meters below the ground, and there are strong underground reservoirs or sources of water.
Right. So the question at hand was, where does the water come from in the water hole? Just so everyone knows, because not everyone can see the questions. So I will read out the next question for you, John, or Josephine. What do you think we can do to ensure that we get to look at the animals in its natural habitat, the rain and all, while minimizing the number of injuries?
So the question is, what do you think we can do to ensure that we get to look at the animals in their natural habitat while minimizing the number of injuries? I'm assuming injuries to nature and to wildlife.
That's a difficult question. I suppose in essence, interfering as little as possible, making sure that animals are free to roam, that they have good habitat, good sources of food, good places safe places to spend the night or to live underground. Really being as, I think maybe one can think of it this way: humans and animals need to try to live in harmony. And with as many of us and as many of them as happy as possible. Just how that harmony works will differ from place to place and from animal to animal. But it's about being harmonious, it's about being kind, it's about being mindful of animals and their needs and their rights, if you like. No, humans need to be a lot more kinder than I think we often are.
What were the animals that when you're speaking.
Those were black-faced impala, an antelope that is fairly widely distributed in Africa. We have a particular subspecies called a black-faced impala, which only occurs in northwestern Namibia. Very beautiful, attractive animal.
The next question is, what kind of pathogens most common in Namibia?
You, again, a difficult question. We have lots and lots of pathogens, bacteria, viruses, various worms. I can't even begin to imagine which is commonest, but there are lots. Fewer because the environment is so arid, fewer than you would have in a more tropical environment, wetter environment. But lots of them essentially use water holes or use water as a vector. So they will deposit their eggs or their spores in the water in the hope or in the expectation that potential host will come along and pick them up. The one pathogen, a bilharzia worm, is very common in Africa, and it moves between snails and humans. And humans get infected when they bathe in the water, swim in the water in many parts of Africa.
Yeah, I think for this area, there's also rabies. If you've heard of rabies, is very common here, and it's very indigenous here in carnivore populations, especially the black alpacas.
And kudus.
And kudu as well, yeah. So there's rabies that's prevalent in this area.
And in Etosha, another prevalent disease or pathogen is a bacterium called anthrax, which is very nasty and causes a mortality of a lot of animals in Etosha National Park.
Oh, how big would that be? That's Etosha Park. How big would that be?
Yeah, again, an interesting question. You guys are full of interesting, difficult questions. The pan at the moment, as it is about 4,500 square kilometers. I couldn't translate that into square miles. I'm sure you can. So that's its present size. What is interesting is that it used to be much, much larger. And if you please, when you have a chance, go into Zoom, into Google Earth and have a look. At one stage, it was so big that it extended right up into Angola. So then it would have been, maybe 20 times bigger than it is now. But that was a long time ago.
John and Josephine, could you please tell us a little bit more about the pictures that we are looking at on the static page?
Okay, I can see some of those. One of them was a student collecting termites. I think the termites were being collected as a bio indicator for the area. Yeah. And the one with the elephant in the background, that's a very interesting one. Wildlife is present all the time, so they are collecting water samples. And this one is for the termites and the yeah, and that one is the students. There was a group of students, high school students that we had over, and there was a dead giraffe that's been dead for 4 years, and they had so much fun putting it back together, putting all the bones where they're supposed to be and just reassembling it. And they did a pretty good job. They did a really good job of it.
Yeah, the bones were scattered over a large area, so they had to go off into the scouring the area to find all the bones. And it was remarkable that how many bones they actually found and put it all back together again. It's a lot of fun.
I'm actually curious, is that a skeleton of a giraffe?
Yeah, that's the skeleton of
Yeah, we have another question in the Q&A. It says, how many species are there in Namibia, confirmed and estimated?
Ooh, that's another huge question. Species of mammals or insects or trees, it's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, give us some easy questions. I don't know. Probably in terms of numbers that are known, probably 10,000 at least, estimated, probably another, 2 or 3 times that number. There's so many small organisms that we know nothing about. We don't even know, where they are. And whenever people do some, just look into different parts of the country or different groups of plants and animals, they discover many new species.
Yeah, I think for birds, I can say we have around little less than 700 species, and that's just birds. So I could not tell you how many mammals or how many insects we have because there's just too many. There is just too many, which is a good thing. Any more questions from the audience? Ask away.
Easy questions, please.
While we wait for the audience's questions, I'll pop in a question again. What was the most impressive animal that you encountered in your research?
Oh, John, you start. You've had lots of research, so this should be easy for you.
Sure. Somebody early on asked the question about how can we avoid injuries. I was very lucky many years ago to spend almost a year on a small island called Marion Island, which is between Africa and Antarctica. So about 1,500 odd miles south of South Africa. And no people live on that island. It's inhabited largely by seals and, of course, lots of plants and a lot of seabirds. And what was most impressive, just to get to your question, it was an amazing and impressive experience to find all these animals completely unafraid of humans. So if you walked up to a seal, it would, and you got too close, it would belt you with its flipper, or a penguin would peck your boots. You could sit right next to a wandering albatross chick or an adult, literally, within a couple of feet away, and it would look you in the eye. And that just, was a very impressive experience. And and it really brought home how throughout the world so many animals fear humans, and that's a sad thing. Of course, that hasn't happened overnight. It reflects hundreds of thousands of years of evolution and being hunted and pestered by people. But again, it reminds one that we can be a lot kinder and live in closer harmony with animals. So that was, if I was to venture any impressive experience in my life, that would be among the top.
Oh, very good answer. I think for me, it's a very stereotypical answer, but it's going to be elephants. The most poignant memory I have is the first time I saw a herd of elephants just walking out of the middle of the desert, middle of nowhere. You never expect it there, but just seeing this herd of like 22 elephants walking out of the desert, walking towards the waterhole was very, very impressive, and I'll never ever forget that. And I see we have more questions in the Q&A. What is the most that has to do with conservation and bee conservation? I guess I can share a little bit. I think it's more on the amount of sacrifices you need to make in order to live in the field, because you can't really live in the city if you want to be like a field conservationist. You have to live in the field, and of course that means you see very little of your family, you see very little of your friends, so a bit of that. I think that plays part. John, you want to add anything to that? What is the most difficult challenge that you've encountered and how to combat?
I'm not sure that I've had, I mean, I think an important point that Josephine's alluding to, it's doing this kind of work and living where we live is not everybody's cup of tea. And yeah, you have some things to sacrifice, but in as much as you have a job and earn some money, you also earn an incredible amount of enjoyment and fun. So yeah, your salary is, your monthly salary is made up of some dollars, but it's also made up of an enormous amount of enjoyment and fun. And then, you know, given that kind of double payment, if I can put it that way, not too many things are challenging. It's a good life.
Okay. How did you come to be working here or in general? And what do you need to do with that?
Yeah. I guess, yeah, most people who come to do this kind of work are just passionate about it. As a kid, something sparked an interest. They met somebody, they watched a film, they found a bird's nest, they learned how to pick up a scorpion by the tail. Yeah, simple things, but all of those things are sparks that, you know, get us interested. Of course, we're talking about an interest in wildlife or animals or plants, or but the same thing goes for any kind of job, you know, which is not routine. You can go to university, you can go to college. Often good idea to find people that are useful, I suppose, mentors that you can work with. Get yourself a holiday job, working with somebody who does the kind of thing that interests you. Look around, you know, don't rely too much on it. To enjoy these things. Its passion is really important for this, and of course everything in life.
Thank you for that. Yeah, so you need to have passion, and some of the things you can look at in university studying zoology, botany, ecology, something to do with the natural science. If you want to get in a career that has to do with the natural sciences, so anything along that direction should be where you want to be. See, what can we do to contribute to protecting wildlife?
Well, start in your own backyard, figuratively. I mean, of course, we always think about wildlife of elephants or bears or tigers or kangaroos or you know, colorful birds. But wildlife is everywhere. In every city in the world, there's wildlife. And looking after those, yeah, that wildlife, those plants and so on, that's really important. And use whatever resources you have to contribute to protecting wildlife. If your parents are really rich, encourage them to make some sort of donation to conservation NGO, or yeah. There are many, many different things that can be done to contribute to conservation and the protecting of. And it's not just wildlife. I have to add, you know, vegetation, natural vegetation. Without that, you know, many animals would have nothing to eat.
That is because of Namibia, and I think Namibia has a lot of I was interested in exploring that and getting to understand that more. I don't know why that's for you, John. John, why Namibia?
Simply because I live here. But Namibia is a wonderful country. Not being nationalistic or patriotic, it's just a blooming wonderful country.
I see there's no more questions. And our time is near to the end. And any last words? If you really want to create conservation or you just want to explore the natural world, I think you should. There's a lot of good resources out there, like documentaries, like books. I think someone in the comments, the Q&A mentioned that they read and get a lot of information from books. So read, explore. explore. There's a lot of information, there are a lot of resources out there that can give you a lot of information and hopefully spark your passion. Any last words, John?
Yeah, come to Namibia if you can. It's a great place for a holiday, easy place. And if you'd like more information about Ongava and the stuff that we do, there's a website. I think it's www.orc.eco, as in ecology. Thank you to all of you for listening and asking questions. And we wish you all the best for the future. And perhaps we'll meet one day.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Josephine and John, for answering these inspiring questions. I will just like to remind the Scouts that the challenge code for all of those who missed it for this session is CEJX9. CEJX9. I have typed it down in the chat box, so you guys can go ahead and copy that and paste it over there where you need to paste it to pick up your badges. I would just like to say once again that the Ongava Research Center has a static page on the Jota Jodi platform. You can go ahead over there and watch the video that we watched again, get some more information, explore the amazing pictures that they sent us, and definitely do check out their webpage. I believe Josephine has just pasted the link in the chat box. So go ahead and check that out. Once again, thank you so much for answering these questions, Josephine and John. It's been amazing. And yeah, I wish you all a happy rest of your Jota Joti weekend. And I wish you all, I wish you both a lovely Sunday.
Wishing everyone a lovely Sunday. Goodbye, everyone. Enjoy the rest of Jota Joti.
Goodbye.